Yeah, so I think we can go ahead and get started. I'll hand it over to Michael, who will tell us about the training working group and also kick us off with the first session. Over to you, Michael.
Yes, so thanks, Jeffrey, for the kind words. Let me first start with a list of, well, who will be taking part in this webinar as presenters. You just heard Jeffrey. He's a staff member of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, currently the Community Programs Manager for Eastern and Southern Africa. I'm Michael. I'm a volunteer and I'm currently the chair of HOT's training working group. And also with us here presenting will be Sharon Amoja, a GIS analyst who is also active in the training working group. What are we going to talk about today? We'll start with a bit of layer handling in JOSM. And we'll also talk about imagery alignment in that section. After that, you will hear some advanced editing techniques. Next, we will come to how to use the filters and selections dialogues to get your work done easier. Then I will talk about a problem which often occurs when you start uploading the conflict resolution, intimidating to many, but try to make it smooth. And finally, Jeffrey will be back and tell you something about relations in JOSM. So let's just dive into the subject. So whenever you have a question, just type it into the chat window or use the Q&A window, and the others here of us who are not currently presenting will take care of that. Layer handling. Well, this means I'm going to talk about basically the upper right corner of the JOSM window where you can see the layers. And well, as this is an advanced webinar, I'm sure you're familiar with many of these. At the top, you'll see the data layers, and in the lower part, you'll see the imagery layers selected. Don't be confused if these data layers all carry arbitrary names and not layer 1, 2, 3, 4. It's easy to rename a layer, particularly if you have several in there and want to not to confuse and get confused by them. Just click the context menu and there you'll have an entry on renaming a layer and you can give it a more verbose name. This is an example of a pretty unmapped area, and you see some waterways in here. And maybe you would like to map them. But the main point, of course, with a waterway is, well, you don't know the direction of flow of the water, but that is the direction of the way for the waterway in OpenStreetMap. So maybe you've already heard of that in other webinars, but there are some topographical layers which you can use, and they come in quite handy for that purpose. And my favorite here is the OpenCycle map. If that is not standard in your imagery menu, just go to the imagery preferences, and there you'll find lots of those worldwide layers here at the beginning. There is the OpenCycle map. There is also something called an OpenTopo map. And I think there are one or two others showing contour lines. And if you activate this layer, at least once JOSM lets me, the OpenCycle map layer, then you can get a better picture of this here. You can see here there are roughly the 600-meter contour lines here at the east, and the west we're approaching 1,000. So the terrain falls from west to east, which makes it easy in this case to say, well, that's the way the waterways will be flowing. And you don't have to switch them on and off all the time. You can also play around with the visibility. That's this icon here. And you can reduce the opacity of this layer so that anything below that shines through. Might be quite good in order to get a better orientation about the terrain. So whenever you're unsure about what the terrain is, just keep in mind there are a few layers available which can help you in this direction. As far as the imagery layers are concerned, you can well, you can tune quite a couple of bits, like the colorfulness, the gamma, which is basically, oops, should activate it first, of course. The gamma, which is something like darkness and brightness, and you can also try to adjust a bit sharpness of those layers. And we'll need that in different situations. So, and of course, you can also arrange the vertical stack of those layers with these arrow keys. When we're talking about layer handling and alignment of data layers, well, generally, there can be a couple of reasons for problems we encounter when working with imagery layers. Every layer, every worldwide layer, which we say here, is a mosaic stitched together from individual recordings. Those individual imageries do not often match perfectly because no one's going to do that job manually, of course. So my favorite example of what can happen in a situation like is this one, a road I personally wouldn't want to drive on. So pretty often imagery alignment isn't as prominent as in this part, but well, you can easily see there is an offset of more than 10 meters between those two parts of the road. And even when we are working on projects on the hot tasking manager, there is typically not a single offset across the whole project. So that's one of the problems we will have to face. And I'm going to give you a bit of a feeling of best strategies how to deal with all this. But first of all, I like to show you a different scenery, different imagery layers. If we zoom in closer to here, and I'll exclude this layer here for a moment, we see this is a densely built up city center, and there are also some taller buildings. And it is usually pretty instructive, not just to use the one imagery you're being told to use, but to also have a look at different imageries. This one here is Bing. If you look at the same situation in Maxar, oops, this has been recorded from a completely different angle. So mapping in an area with really high and tall buildings is a bit of a difficult thing. And as you see, someone had been mapping here pretty perfectly. We always tell you, map the footprint of higher buildings. That means map the geometry where it touches the ground. And the reason is pretty easy. If we just compare these two buildings here, less taller one and a higher one here, they seem to be pretty perfectly mapped according to that rule. And if I now switch the imagery, we'll see, well, it is still pretty well aligned to the footprint of those buildings. Also, the roof does appear at a totally different area, and that is a good imagery here to tell you why you should never map the roof building, the roof of the building. Use it to determine the exact geometry, but then shift it down to the footprint, because if you'd map it in here, then of course the roof would intersect the road. So most of the imagery we see is never taken from a perfectly vertical position. There is almost always a certain angle involved. So just make sure that you map the building footprint, and switching between different imagery layers can also give you a good indicator of what buildings really look like. So I promised to give you a couple of hints how to deal with imagery mismatch. The point with imagery simply is, well, typically we don't know the real position of an object. Imagery misalignment errors, something below 10 meters, are pretty common. And if you tell me, well, there might be GPS layers, well, GPS has not unlimited accuracy. Even GPS will have a typical accuracy of 1-digit meters. So unless we see an imagery misalignment of some 30 or 40 meters, we can safely assume that, well, anything below that is really within specifications. And we simply don't know what the real position of an object is on the ground. So the best option how to deal with this when mapping is go for least effort. Look what most of the objects, buildings, and roads have been mapped so far. Use this as the reference, and if you need to use a newer imagery, then just shift that newer imagery so that it matches existing mapping. Unless some project instructions have a good reason to tell you something different. But if you're unsure, this is typically the golden rule, go for least effort, because we don't know what the real position is. So in this area, now the Bing imagery layer is active, and we see these buildings here obviously have been exactly mapped from Bing. Now someone's going to tell you there is a new imagery, Maxar, and please map any additional buildings which are seen there. And when I switch on Maxar, oops, oh yeah, there was a whole lot of activity here to the west of the previously mapped area. So it would be nice to include those buildings as well. But when we look at that scenery we've been looking at right now here with all those, well, let me select them so they're a bit clearer. Then we see, oops, they don't match the imagery. They were a perfect match in Bing. They are no longer a match when looking at Maxar. And if you then have a look at, for instance, this highway here, you get a feeling that probably, yeah, we should keep Bing as the reference. In this example, it really pays just to have a look at GPS traces. So that means go to the download menu or icon, and then do not activate the usual OpenStreetMap data, but just say raw GPS data and download them. And yep, there will be a few of them. In order to see them, let's switch off here the imagery layers, and we see, okay, it finds a couple of GPS traces in here. And when we look at the Bing imagery, this sounds highly plausible that someone was driving along that road and moving down here. When we look at Maxar in that same area, it becomes pretty obvious that people certainly haven't been driving here along the trees. So yes, this is another indicator that Maxar here has an offset. So how do we deal with this? We go back to that scenery with these houses and select them so that they are visible more prominently. And now we switch to Maxar. And when it comes to in the imagery menu, you can, the third entry tells you imagery offset. And if you've got several imagery layers active, then you first have to select the proper one. We are going to determine the offset for Maxar Premium. And if someone, for instance, in a hot project would have told you there is an imagery offset of specified numbers, you could simply enter them in here. Other than that, we will simply drag the imagery so that it matches the existing mapping. So with the left mouse button, we're simply now dragging the imagery so that it matches those shapes here, which were previously mapped. Now we see we have obviously an imagery misalignment of some 5 to 6 meters. And when we think, well, that's the optimum position, we hit OK. And then we have Maxar aligned to existing mapping. And then we can start dealing with these objects here. And as I told you, best idea is always start from the roof, then change the mode here and move it down to the footprint. So that's how you would deal with a situation like this. It is not so important that we have an exact, accurate, absolute position of all objects because we kind of determine it anyways. But it is important to have a consistent map, which means all the objects should have the proper relative positions. All the buildings should be on the proper side of the road or on the proper side of the waterway. because that's how people will recognize the scenery when they are working on the ground, trying to find people in those buildings. And whenever you're working on a hot project and see that some of those buildings are way out of their alignment, you are invited to correct that. Just as my suggestion is, go for least effort. See what most of the existing objects have been mapped according to, use that as the gold reference unless you are told something different, and try to align everything else with this. And in this way, we can avoid having maps which are somehow distorted. And yes, again, you're invited to play with these settings here for opacity and colorfulness. It might pay sometimes to try to increase sharpness a little bit, but of course you cannot achieve miracles. But in this way, you can see this sun looks a bit blurred, and we can really increase a little bit. We go here, we see the edges a bit clearer, but yeah. That is about what I was going to tell you about these imagery layers and the data layers, and how to deal with imagery alignment. Do we have any questions so far?
Yes, there's some questions in the chat. So one is, can we safely assume that in most cases drone imagery is more accurate than satellite imagery and adjust map features accordingly?
Well, as far as accuracy is concerned, I would say the point is, in most cases, we don't know the real capture dates of the imagery. We don't know that for drone imagery. Typically, we don't know that for aerial imagery. There are a few layers which help us in here. So as far as Bing is concerned, you can right-click here on that Bing imagery layer. And, oh no, not on the imagery layer, of course, here in the canvas, and go to show tile info. And then it tells you there is a capture date somewhere between 2010 and 2014. Unfortunately, currently Bing is the only layer which gives you capture dates. I know that Maxar is working on something, but so far no one else has come up with it. As far as aerial imagery captured from drones is concerned, if that's a hot project, then maybe the project manager knows when there's drone activities took place. So unless you really have that information, it's a bit of guessing. Well, in this case, I was showing you, it's pretty obvious that these buildings are far newer than the ones on the eastern part of that imagery. So it's a good bet to assume that Maxar in this area here is newer than Bing, but this is, of course, not always the case. So you should never blindly assume that something is newer because it somehow sounds newer. And drones have been used for quite some time now, and Bing, Maxar, and the others are always updating their imagery at different intervals. Maxar seems to be updating at an annual rate. Well, Bing has, well, as we can see in here, 2010 to 2014, Bing imagery can be old, but I've seen Bing imagery from the Philippines, for instance, which was absolutely recent. This, by the way, is from Abidjan, Ivory Coast. No, not Abidjan, Yamoussoukro, Ivory Coast. So you really can't make a guess here.
Thank you. There is also another question
about importing imagery. There is one of the plugins which you could use. So from the preferences and the plugins, I think it is exactly that would be the. There is one thing, the image import plugin is for already georeferenced images, but look in my notes, because this is not the first time this question has been asked. Just look. That would be the pick layer plugin. There is a pick layer plugin, this one here. So you can use basically, you can import any raster image there, and there's also an option which allows you to georeference it, for instance, against known background imagery. But the most important point when talking about such imports is make sure that you have a permission to use that imagery. So don't just grab something from somewhere on the internet, because there's pictures come with copyrights. So unless you know that permission is given to use this for OpenStreetMap, don't do that. But if you've got something, or if you took a picture of your own, for instance, out of plane, that would be the plugin to use for that application.
Yeah, and there's one on that's changing offsets. Does it shift edits of one tile only, which means inside the edit boundary? Only in our use case. So he's asking like if you correct the offset, whether it only shifts things within the area you have downloaded.
No, it shifts it globally. So that means, well, of course, this imagery shift is lost when you close JOSM and open it again. So it is not persistent, but it's persistent. So that means if I switch to a different layer here and have a look at Maxar in here, the shift is still active, which I entered previously. So if I delete the layer and open it again, yeah, then it's gone. So as long as you keep the imagery layer here, the shift will be active.
Okay, and there's another question on how does one cycle map to determine the river flow direction? Is there a resource on this that one could read?
Well, these topographic map layers are typically based on samples from radar. So there have been radar missions, both from the space shuttle when it was flying, but also from satellites. And these measurements are available, put into the public domain, both by NASA as well as the Japanese Space Agency. And they are available at roughly 15-meter resolution. So that's a pretty precise picture of the Earth's topography. And those layers exploit that and turn these meshes into contour layers. So that's pretty reliable. Yes, and there is something in the Q&A window. No, I don't say that I explicitly do not say that Maxar is always newer than Bing. As I said, quite recently I had a scenery here from the Philippines on my computer, and there Bing was newer compared to Maxar. So unfortunately, there is no rule of thumb. But sometimes you can guess it if you see a brand new building or one under construction and there is nothing at a different layer. So highly probable that the one with the building under construction is newer, but don't make any wild guesses. So far, we only know the capture date from Bing, but unfortunately not from any other of the layers we use. There's also that question here, if the copyright automatically trickles down. No, definitely not. I mean, it means basically we can only use images which are licensed for the ODBL license for OpenStreetMap, or where people have expressly given us permission to use them for OpenStreetMap. As far as Bing, Maxar, and ESRI are concerned, the companies behind that have explicitly given permission to OpenStreetMap to use those imagery layers. Google does not. So please never use anything from Google, because we're not allowed. This would be a violation of their copyright. And so the best bet is just use those imagery layers which are available in JOSM's imagery menu, because these are licensed layers. be very careful if you try to use something on your own, and really make sure that you have the proper rights to use that.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. If there's not anything else, maybe we can move on to the next section by Sharon.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm going to take you through advanced editing techniques. And yeah, so majorly we are going to talk about how we can edit complex buildings, how we can do road river intersections, the joins, how we can unglue nodes, yeah, and all that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Yeah, so can you all see my screen?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Yes, it's that.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with complex buildings. How can we work on complex buildings on JOSM? And I'm going to use an example of Nairobi. This is Nairobi. Yeah, this is Nairobi, and we are going to, most of the buildings that are here have not been done correctly. And we are going, this is the basis of what we're going to do, what we're going to learn, how we can correct the buildings with how they've been done. Yeah, so the first thing that you're going to do, we are going to use this building as an example, how better can we map this building. Yeah, so the first thing that you're supposed to do is, when you're mapping a building, the first thing that you're supposed to do is to start by trying to get the alignment of a building correct. And you can do that by determining the longest length of the building. So with the buildings tool, you can use the various shortcuts that have been provided. Like for the buildings tool is B. Yeah, so when you click on B in your keyboard, the buildings tool is activated. And when we start, let's say we want to start doing this building, we click from here. And yes, so we have this building, but you understand that this is not the correct shape for this building because we have this part and this part. So there are various ways we can do to get the correct shape for this building. Yeah, so the first thing that we can do is to select the building that we have drawn. You understand that when you use the building tool, it automatically comes with the building tag value, yes. So if we select this building and draw a second one, select the building, we draw a second one. We draw a second building. And we can now select both the buildings that we have, this one and the other building. And when we press J, the J key on our keyboard, the buildings should join. Just a moment. You select both the buildings and J. Shift and J, the buildings should be joining. Control Shift and yeah, so when you select both the buildings and then you hold on Shift and J, the buildings should be joining. So now you see it's like one building that have been joined, but you drew them as like two separate buildings. But let's go back. Let's undo and undo. This may not work with buildings that have different designation. Let's say one is an apartment and the other one building, yes, that does not work. So let's try and change this tag to building, like apartment, building apartment, yes. And then we try and draw another building. Then select both the buildings, J. You see there is a conflict. So it says there is conflict when we are trying to combine the two buildings, because one is buildings apartment, and the other one that we drew comes with a building yes value. So what you can do in this case, you go to the value, you choose a value, and you can decide which value to take for both the buildings. You can decide to take buildings apartment for both, or building yes for both. So if you click on yes and you apply, you see that the two buildings are joined. Yeah, so another easier way to do that is to use the extrude tool, or this one here that looks like a ruler, or you can use the X key on your keyboard, so as to join this building and the other building. So what you do with the extrude tool, you click on it, and this is where the other building is. You add a node and you just extend it outwards. So we have this building as one building. So it's the same with this one. You just click the tool, the node there, click another node, and extend it. So we have that one, and now it gives us the correct shape for the building as desired. Yeah, so that is with the extrude tool. Another thing is for buildings. Let's say that there are buildings that shares a wall. For example, let me see. Buildings sharing a wall. Which one is coming? See, this one seems to share a wall. Okay, let me first start with the buildings that are of the same shape. Then I'll go back to buildings that share a wall. So we have these three buildings. As you can see, they're all of the same shape. So like, what can we do so that we have that same shape for these buildings, instead of doing each building separately? So the easiest way, we start with the first building. Draw the building. After you've drawn the building, you select on it. You select the building and control copy, and you move your cursor to where you want the other building to be, and then control paste. So here we have the other building. Again, the other building is selected, control copy, wherever you want the other building to be, that's where you place your cursor and control paste. So we have the three buildings. That is easier, instead of drawing each building like one at a time. Yeah, that's for that. So let's go to buildings that shares the same wall. I'm trying to see if there is an example here that we can use. I think this one. Just a moment. I'm not going to save this because deleting is not recommended when mapping in OSM. I'm just trying to look at buildings that share the same wall, so that we can see how we can do that. Yeah, so buildings that share the same wall, I think these ones that were mapped as two different buildings. We can do the first building, which is this one. So, for the buildings that share the same wall, that is like two different buildings. Yeah, they from the image, they look like they share the same wall, but really they are two separate buildings. And that is always noticeable with the formal settlements, where we have semi-detached or detached houses. But for informal settlements, they may look like they're sharing the same wall, but really the correct representation on the ground, they do not share any wall. So majorly, when you are doing this, when you want to buildings sharing the same walls, it's always majorly for for buildings in informal settlements. So let's say these two are sharing the same wall. We can, this is just an example. So we can select on this first building. We select on this first building and we select on the first node, and so this is the, for us, this is the wall that, let's say, these two buildings are sharing. So in our case, we'll first select the first node, and with shift, you hold down shift and select the second node. Just a moment. Yeah, so we select this one and Control B. Okay. That one. Sorry about that. Let me start over. This building. Yeah. Sorry about that. To click on the Geoffrey, can you, I don't know, I'm trying to click on the node and drag it, but I don't know, it's not working. Okay, let me try figure that out. I don't know, it's not working. Let me go to the next thing. I'll come back to that. Another thing is, like, when we're doing a building, how can we keep the history and replace only geometry, like when we are mapping in JOSM? Yeah, so the first thing, let's say we had these two buildings, these ones that have been mapped, and this was mapped as a building, but it was not correctly mapped. So what is always recommended when you're mapping in OpenStreetMap, you're not supposed to delete other people's or other mappers' work, because this interferes with their history. So what is always recommended is, one, you can always move the nodes so that it takes the shape of the feature that you want to map. Or another thing that you can do in this case, we can maintain another history into a new building. So in this case, we had this building that wasn't mapped correctly. So what you can do, we can let's just move it like sideways so that we see what we want to correctly map. So this is the building that you want to map. In this case, what you do, you map this building. Let's say this is the building that you want to map. You map it. The script was here. So this is the new building that you wanted to map, but this is what was mapped instead. So what do we do so that we don't interfere with the history of this mapper, what the mapper did? In our case, what we do, we hold on shift, we select the two buildings, the one that you added, the new building that you added, and the previous building that was not mapped correctly. And with shift, control, and G, the old buildings is maintained. You maintain the history of the old building into now this new building. I hope you get that. Yeah, so and here you can also try and delete, like if you have spare nodes, you have so many nodes, you can delete them. Okay, here we have I think those nodes are okay for us. Yeah, so that is for that, keeping the history of a previous mapper's work by replacing only the geometry of a building. Yeah, so the other thing that you're going to talk about on buildings is, let's see. Yeah, I was trying to do the walls. No, it's not. I mean, let's try the walls again. Yeah, so we have this building here. Okay, so yeah, so you can see how we can do a building that shares the same wall. So what you do is you with the building tool, you click on the building tool. Let me undo that actually. You click on the building tool. So when it's active, you click on one node. Let's say like this one is what we want to move. You click on that one node, and then you click on the other node, and then you can drag. So you can see these are two buildings, but now because they share the same wall, so you have these two buildings that are separated. I'm just going to repeat that because it didn't come out clearly. Let's look at another building. Let's look at this one. Remember, you're not supposed to delete. So the deleting I'm doing, I'm not going to save them so that we don't interfere with the history. Yeah, so in this case, this is our first building. Yeah, this is our first building. But let's say they share, if they share the same, yeah, I think this is perfect. We have this one, this is perfect. This is a building and they share the same wall with this one. So what we do, we click on the buildings tool. If it's activated, you click on the first node and then the second node. That is where the buildings share the wall, and then you drag it. So with the extrude tool, we're going to click on this one and then we get that one. So we have our two buildings, but which are sharing the same wall. Yeah, that is for the buildings. Anyone who have a question before I go to the next?
There is no question so far.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the next one that I'm going to cover is where we have roads and rivers intersecting. So how do we go about that? Let me see. Yeah, so where we have roads and rivers intersecting, in these places, you're going to find, let's say you're going to find three features. It's either you're going to find a bridge in such a place where a road and river is intersecting. You're going to find a culvert, or you're going to find a ford. So we are going to start. How do we map a bridge where there is a road and a river intersecting? Yeah, so this is one of the major rivers in Kenya. So here it is, and we have the road that was mapped, and we have the river. But here between the road and the river, what is there is the bridge. This is the bridge. And as we all know that a bridge does not just start or end at the edge of the water. Like the bridge cannot start here and just end immediately here. So from the image, as you analyze the image, you realize that the bridge starts here and ends somewhere here. So this is our bridge. So how do you go about mapping the bridge? Yeah, so if you want to map the bridge, the first thing that we do, we add a node to the both ends where the bridge starts and where the bridge ends. Yeah, so you can use Control A to add a node. So this is where our bridge starts on the other side, and escape. Now that is one node, and then the other node, you click on there and then you click on escape. So we have these two nodes that you're going to use to add our bridge. So we are going to select the two nodes, this one and this one, the two nodes that we just added, and then yeah, so we click on this shift, we click on this. So these are the two nodes that we're going to use to add the bridge. So after the two are selected, we click on P on our keyboard. So this one, which segment? This one. We check this one, segment one. Okay, no, just one. Sorry. No, that not when you add the other one. Control A there. Skip. Yeah, so we click on the two nodes, this one and the other node, and if you click on the P, then you click OK. While you're selecting the whole road. And this one. Yeah, so here it is. So these are the two areas that we created where we want to have our bridge. So we add, as we have now selected the section on the bridge, we want to add a tag to it, and it's a bridge value bridge, yes. A bridge, yes. And now we have that one, we have a bridge, yes. Yeah, so as you all understand, as you all can see from the image, a bridge goes over a river or a waterway. It doesn't go under. So in our case, we have, if let's say the river was over the bridge. So what you do here is after you have selected the bridge, you add another tag. So we go to, you click on add a tag and then layer, and then value is 1, and then you click OK. Yeah, so the bridge is over the river or the waterway, and that's what is expected. So you can see that the bridge color and the river are different. So this one automatically, now when you come to this place, you're just going to know that this is a bridge. So if you try to run a validation here on the validation results, you can see that there's some warning here. These are, I think, for the other roads. But if you try to run on the validation, it shouldn't be giving you an error for the bridge and the river. Because the river and the road, they're not of the same layer. So we shouldn't be having a node where they intersect. Yeah, so that is on the bridge. What about now, like where we have a river that is a road that is running across a river? Let's take a place like yeah, so I have this place. This is a river. It's a very dry river, but which gets is a seasonal river. So we have a road and we also have a river that is passing through this place. So what do we do in this case? Yeah, so in this case, you're supposed to have a node at the point of intersection between the road and the river. Unlike the bridge, we are not supposed to have a point of intersection because the two are different layers. So for where the road runs across a river and are of the same level, we should have a node at intersection. So what we do is this is our road. We put a cursor on our road, and then we add a node at the point where they are intersecting, and we click on escape. So this is our node. And at that point, when you select the node and we add a tag, so our tag here is going to be here. In this case, it's a Ford, and our value Ford. Yes, and that gives us that. So when you click on that, we have the Ford there. So that is where the river and the road intersect, because both of them are of the same layer. So that's for the Ford. And I'm going to tackle on where we have culverts. You know, for culverts, unlike bridge, where the bridge are above the waterway, culverts are always like on the same level with the waterways. So let's take an example of an area where we have a culvert. Yeah, this place. As you can see, the road, this is a continuous road, and we have a river. As we zoom out, I think you can see clearly this is a river. This is a river, and a culvert. The river passes through the culvert to the other side of the road. So how do we do a culvert? It's not the same with how we can do the river, the bridge, I mean, or how we can do the ford. So in this case, how we can add, we can do the culvert. Let's do this river first, so that we can add the culvert. Yeah, I'm going to do this river. Yeah, we'll just end it there. Don't forget to add the tag. It's a waterway. River. Yeah, waterway river. Yeah, so there we have our river. So how do we do like the culvert that passes beneath the road? So here what we do is like we click on one node, we click on one node on the river, not on the road in this case. Yeah, so let's just move this nodes here. This is where the river passes. Yeah, so this is where the culvert is. At this point and at this point and the other side of the road. So we click on this node, let's move it there, and this other node, and move it there. And then so we click on these two nodes. And then click on this node. And then yeah, so we have the two nodes that have been separated now, and then we can now add our tag. Here, in this case, is a tunnel. And the value is culvert. Okay, yeah, so there we have our culvert. So unlike a bridge that passes over a building, you remember when you're adding a bridge, we added another tag, clear one, because a bridge passes over a waterway. For a culvert, here we are going to add another tag. We're going to give it layer. But now because it passes under the road, we are going to have the value is -1, and you're going to have it as okay. So it will go below. It will go below the road. The culvert will go below the road. Yeah, and really the three features that we do when we are mapping areas where there is road and river intersections. Yeah. So any questions so far?
Yeah, there was a question about the layers. Michael has answered it in the chat, but maybe you can also say something about it. So the question was, since the bridge is level with the ground and the river goes beneath it, should we not use layer equals -1 for the river section instead of bringing the bridge to layer 1?
Sorry, Jeffrey.
Yeah, since the bridge is level with the ground and the river goes beneath it, should we not use layer equals -1 for the river instead of bringing the bridge to layer 1?
Okay, yeah. So let me just go back to the bridge that we did. Yeah, the bridge that we did. So you see, in our case, this requires it's all about imagery interpretation. If we use like here we have let's see if we're going to use, in our case, what we want to go down is the bridge, only the part that we, oh, we didn't save this one, sorry. The part that we separated as the bridge, that is what we are going to have, because the road and the river, the road always goes above the river. So if we are going to, you were asking like if we can have the waterway as a -1 instead. Yeah, you can also like add a tag for the waterway to go down. I think if you do both, like the bridge layer 1 so that it goes above the waterway, or you select on the waterway so that it goes below the river, and you give it a -1, that I think that will also give you the same thing, because the river will go below the bridge.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sharon. Just one more. How different is the ford from these? I think was meaning from either a bridge or a culvert. What's the difference with the ford and the other features?
Okay, so for the ford, ford is where now we have the river and we have the road. We have a river crossing the road, and all are on the same level. Let me just go back to this one so that you can see the difference. You can see this is a road, and this is the river. So during dry seasons, this river is used the people here can just use the river like to cross over the river, because the river, you can see the river and the road are on the same level. So during the dry season, the river is like the road. So that's where we draw the ford. But for the bridge, you can clearly see that the river, for the bridge, the bridge and the culverts, then the bridge and the culverts, they are not always on the same level. Like the culverts is not on the same level as the road, and the bridge is not on the same level as the river. So the bridge goes above the river, and then the culvert goes on the same level with the river. So that's why we have to have them separately. Yeah, there's another one who says about the river line. I think the river line should not be tagged culvert. Instead, the highway line must be tagged culvert. Correct me. Okay. Yeah. So when you're doing a culvert, as I say, the culvert passes. The culvert is like a tunnel. The culvert is like a tunnel that the waterway passes. So what we do here when we want to designate the culvert from the river or from the road, what we do here is we create two nodes at the river. That is unlike the bridge. For the bridge, we create two nodes on the bridge because the bridge has, in most cases, the bridge always have the same surface as the road. Let me just go back to our not buildings. Let me go back to our bridge so that we can understand this. Yeah, you can see now in this case, like when we are doing this bridge, this is where our bridge is. So if you interpret the image correctly, this is our bridge. So what you're going to do, you're going to create nodes on the road to differentiate between the part where the bridge is and the rest of the road. And that is the same. That is the same for culverts. Culverts are always constructed on the sides of the road. So they're always not part, the culverts are not always part of the road. Was that understood?
Yeah, I think that's clear. Okay.
And there is a follow-up question asking whether the highway light should be the tagged culvert and not the river, but no, the culvert is the waterway.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Michael, for that. Yeah, so if there is no other question, I'm going to demonstrate on how you can merge or unglue, like where we have nodes. Yes, let's go back to. Yeah, for that we're still going to use the buildings, this area for the buildings in Nairobi. So we are going to get where we have the buildings that have been yeah, for these two. Let me see. Yeah, so if we want to merge or to unglue nodes, what do we do? So in this case, let's try and find a place where we have a building that they've been joined together. There's a building that we did. Yeah. Let me just add this first so that I can use it for demonstration. Yeah, so we have these two, we have a node, like the nodes that have been like into one node. So what do we do if we want to separate these two nodes? So in this case, we select the building. We select one of the buildings that we want to separate. With the shift key, we select on the two nodes, this one and this one. The two nodes. Yeah, so you can see they have been separated. Yeah, what we do is you select the building that you want to separate the nodes from, and then you hold down on, sorry, you hold down on shift key, you select on one of the nodes that you want to separate and the other node. So we have these two nodes that we want to separate from this building. And then you press on G from your keyboard, and then you can, and this one, then you press on G from your keyboard, and then you can move. And then now we can move the building. Now you can see the two, you can see the nodes have been unglued from the other nodes. At first it was like one node that was joining the two buildings, but now we have two separate buildings for this. Now we have two separate buildings. We have moved the nodes away from the other building. So what happens when we wanted to merge this node and this one and this one and this one? Yeah, so when we want to merge, what we do, we click on the node that we want to move, this one. Let's say we want to move this one, and we click on shift, and then we click on the other node, and then we can sorry, we click on the node that we want to move. We hold on shift and we click on the other node that we want to merge it into. So in this case, it's this one. And then we click on M on the keyboard. So you can see that now the two nodes have been merged into one node. You can do the same with this other end. You click on the node that you want to move, click on shift, you click on the other node that you want to move it into, and then with M key on your keyboard. So we have the two nodes that now have been merged. So that's what we do when you want to merge nodes. Another thing is like, what do we do when we want to also join like, let's say nodes, ways? Now that is for buildings. What about when we have ways that we want to join? Let me try and see a way that you can do that. Okay, before I go to ways, there's something I just forgot about buildings. Like when a building is not correctly aligned, what can we do? As I said, that you're not supposed to delete a feature that was mapped by another mapper. So what we do is, in that case, we need to realign the building. So we can select the building. We can select the building that, let's say, we want to realign, and then we hold on shift control. We hold on shift control on our keyboard, and then you can rotate it to how you want it to be. Let's say in our case, this building was, let's use this. This is a perfect example. If we want it to realign it. So we click on the building, we hold on shift and the control, and then now we can rotate it how we want it to be. And we can just be like moving it to where it is. You can rotate it so that it gets until it goes to the position that you want it to be. Yeah, so that's basically what we do when we want to realign buildings that haven't been correctly mapped by another user, instead of deleting. Yeah, so basically that's all from me, how to can do the buildings, how we can do the intersections for roads and rivers, and how we can merge and unglue nodes, merge and unglue nodes. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. So I'm just going to take us through another section on filters, and then selections. And also we talk a little bit about the to-do list plugin. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, can someone please confirm if you can see my JOSM?
It's visible.
Yeah, thank you. So I have some data here that I've pre-downloaded already, which I'll use for my demonstration. So this is in Uganda. That's where we'll focus. So basically, filters help you a lot in JOSM if you are going to even like clean up some data, do some validation, but also even if you are just mapping. So basically what filters do is to either hide some features and then just focus on a particular feature that you want to view. So when you look here in my windows, there is the filter window, but yeah, always, if it's not available here, you can always get it from the Windows menu. So if you look at on Windows list here, you can see one of the options we have here is filter. So you can always select it here and it will appear on your windows here on the right hand side. So how to add a filter? As you can see from my window here, I have a lot of data that is visible. So sometimes it's hard for you to concentrate on what you want to look at. And that's where the filters come in to help, because when there's a lot of data, then it can get confusing. So to add a filter, just go to the filter window here, and then you click on the plus button to add a filter. So I'll just demonstrate with a very easy one, or basic one. I'm going to do a filter that hides everything else and just shows me only roads. So you have to know how the things are tagged in OpenStreetMap. So I know roads are tagged as highway. So I'll just use the search string here as highway and then submit. And when I do that, that will appear here on my filters list. So there are three options here. You have E, which is enable. There is H, which is hide, and I, which is inverse filter. So basically, you can see here the E is checked. So if I check all the three of them, that is enable, hide, and inverse, you're going to see that it hides everything else and to just show me only features that are tagged as highways. So this is also good if you're trying to like clean up like the road network, see like roads that are mid of nowhere, that are not connected to other roads, and you want to kind of fix them and make sure they are connected to other roads. Yeah, the other filter that you can do is if you want to see, for example, waterways, I can also just search here waterway, and then submit filter, and that will, if I activate all the three, it will hide everything else and just shows me only the waterways, as you can see here. So if I'm looking like at like the flow of water, or whether like the waterways are connected, then that would really help me. Yeah, so that's how you. But you can also, if you uncheck hide, then it will show the other features in the background. So you can see here, for example, waterways are highlighted, but then the other features are kind of grayed out in the background. Yeah, so that is the hide. And then if I uncheck the inverse, it's going to show everything else, and then just so it shows everything else and then kind of hides the waterway. So it kind of it's an inverse. So it has inverted my filter, then showing me other things. The other thing you can do, you can also combine strings. So for example, if I want to show highways and waterways, then I can write that as with the pipe operator in the middle, so highway or waterways, and I can submit that, and then I can activate all this. So right now I can see all the waterways, but also the roads combined in my filter, and it's hiding everything else. Yeah, so the other filter which might be useful would be if you want to see edits by just a certain user, because there are so many people who have like mapped in this area but may be interested in looking at only data sets of a particular person. You can also do that through filters. So if I go to yeah, and there's some hints here that are given to you that you can use to kind of write your filter string. So for example, if I want to view data by certain user, I'll go to the metadata here. So you can see here there is user, there is timestamp. So if I click on user, it will be added here, and then I will add the username that I want to search, and you can see here it's giving you a hint on what that does. So I'll use my username as an example if I want to look at only my edits in all this data set. So it's added here. So if I activate all of this, yeah, it will show me only things which I have edited in this area that I have kind of downloaded. So that's how you can do a filter that shows you only data from a particular user. Another one that is very useful is timestamp. You may be interested in seeing data that was only contributed in a certain time period. So yeah, if I go to timestamp here, I can see here the hints that are given to me. So I can just write timestamp, then 2020 slash, that will show me everything that has been contributed since 2020 onwards. So if I submit that filter, so you can see everything. Whenever I add a filter, then it's added to my list here, meaning that you keep your filters there and then you just activate them when you need to use them. Yeah, so I'm just activating this. So what I'm seeing now is data that was, added from 2020 onwards. So it has hidden everything else apart from only data that was contributed from 2020 onwards. I can also do like a specific date. So let us say I want to see data that was contributed just on a particular date. So I'm going to just try and do that. So let us say I want to do, still I'll add it as a timestamp. So let us say I want data that was done on 2020 in August. Let us say August 13. Not sure if this will return anything, but yeah, let's try and see if there is any data that was done on that particular day. So submitted the filter. Yeah, you can also do a time period and you say, okay, from this date to this date, and then it will only show you data between a time period. This can be useful if you're working like on a connected project and have like several people contributing, and you want to validate their data that they worked on a particular day. That would help you to just filter out that data. Or if you want to see data they contributed over a period of time, still you can do that. So yeah, looks like there's no data set for that particular day, but just show you the one for if I want to see data which was contributed like from, for example, January 2020 to August 2020. That's how the filter string would look like, to be having a slash in the middle. Yeah, so that's how you can do filters. But one way how filters also help you if you want to also use the to-do lists plugin. So the to-do list plugin, you just install it from your preferences. But what it really does, it helps you to work on a list of things, and you just look at one by one. So for example, if I want to do to look at only schools that are within this dataset, then I can do a filter. I know schools are tagged in OpenStreetMap as Amente equals school. So that's my filter, which I've submitted here. So after submitting this filter, now I can see only schools have been added to my data set here, but I may want to look at these features one by one. So what I will do, I'm going to select everything, and then I'll come to my to-do list here and click add. So yeah, when you add the to-do lists, it will appear under your windows, and you can always activate it by selecting to-do lists. So you can see mine here. Because it's already added, I can access it from here. Let me delete some of these other windows that I don't need. Yeah, so this is my to-do list here. So if I click on add, means everything that is selected here is going to be added to my to-do list here. So I have 840 objects. So if I'm interested in like checking one by one, then I'll just come and double click. So it will take me to this place, which is Biotech Nursery School. That means I can check it to make sure it is okay. And then after that, after checking it, I can click on mark. So when I say mark, it just jumps to another kind of school. So this is another school. If I say mark, it jumps to another, mark, it jumps to another. So it looks like it has selected also some nodes. Yeah, but my interest was in just the areas and then the points. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So you can see as you click mark, it just jumps to another feature, jumps to another feature. So meaning that you can check one item by one item until everything is clear, and then you upload your changes to OpenStreetMap. So yeah, the other thing you may want to do, so if I want to clear, I can clear my to-do lists, and I can do this as well. So I've removed the filter, so it will show me back my data set. So the other thing you may want to do would be to, you may want to select only buildings. So I'm going to do a filter here that selects only buildings. So let us say I want to select this and add the data to my to-do lists. Let me just use a small group of buildings here so that the data is not so heavy. Yeah, so if I want to select these buildings and I want to check to add them to my to-do lists, what I'll do is to use the draw a rectangle to select. But what you realize is it is selecting the nodes as well as the ways. So what I'm interested in is to select only the ways, only the lines that represent this building. So what I will do is to press Shift plus U on my keyboard. And you can see here now the nodes have been unselected. Now it is selecting only the ways. Now I can come and say add. So now you can see it has added only the buildings. So if you don't unselect the nodes, it will add the buildings, but it also add the individual nodes, which would give you a lot of data. So Shift plus U is the shortcut you use to unselect nodes. That's if you want to add only ways to your to-do list. And yeah, you can just go on and check one by one as you mark. So because it is a to-do list, it will help you just confirm that you have gone through everything, because yeah, you check, you mark, you check, you mark, meaning that you shift from one object to another. Yeah, the other use case for the to-do list is when you are doing an import. So you may want to import data in OpenStreetMap, but as you do the import, you want to check one by one item if it already exists in OSM or not, before you merge and upload to OSM. So you can also collect data like using ODK collect, and then you bring it in here, you add it to the to-do list, and then you check one by one before you merge it with all the same data and uploading. Yeah, so basically that's it about filters and also the to-do lists. Is there any question in the chat?
I think the last two entries in the chat might be something worth being looked at. I'm not sure, Jeffrey, if you want to say something, but you are muted.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. I was just trying to answer Joyce's question about hints. There was a question, where can I get those hints? Because she had a few options here. So yeah, the reason why you were having few options is because under edit and preferences, this is not checked. So if in edit preferences, you are having the expert mode switched on, it will give you more options when you go to the filter window here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll hand over to you, Michael, for the next one. Thank you.
Right, then I'm grabbing the screen again. And you should see my slides concerning conflict resolution. I'm going to walk you
Yes, we can see
by means of a slideshow, because doing a live demo with conflict resolution is most definitely going to create havoc. So conflicts, that's, as I've written here in the headline, the first thing you should remember is it doesn't necessarily mean that you did something wrong. It just means that both you and someone else did some uncoordinated editing on the same object. Well, and that happens, that can always happen, particularly with extended features like roads. So you realize that when you upload your changes, and then JOSM brings up this window telling you that there have been some conflicts. So my first recommendation is that you always select this highlighted button, Synchronize Entire Data Set. It would also offer you, using the left button, to walk you through the conflicts one by one, but it is a good idea to first get an idea of how many conflicts there are. If there are just a handful of conflicts, you can deal with them one after the other. If it turns out that there are 100 or 200 objects in conflict, then, well, maybe it's really easier just to trash your changes and start mapping anew. So you synchronize the entire data set, and then it tells you, hopefully that there's just one conflict detected, and then you will get an entry in the conflict window. The conflict window, it's one of those tabs which are available from the Windows menu, right, where you can also show up those to-do lists and filters we've just been talking about. And there your conflicts would be visible here in a list. Well, we've got only one conflict, that's why we only see this one conflict. And if you double click on one entry, you get the resolution window, which will guide you through the process. This will look a bit intimidating at first, but let me try to explain to you that this is pretty similar. Pretty simple. It has 3 columns. In the left column is your version of the object which you try to upload. In the right column is the most current version in the OpenStreetMap database for that particular object. And the colors identify different parts. The green nodes are the ones which do not cause any problems because they are the same in both versions, both your local one and the one in the database. The red entries here are nodes which have been added in that particular version, and the nodes shown with the salmon color are present in both versions, but at different positions. Additionally, you can see at the top of this window, there are a few tabs. There's also one on tags. This one would also be highlighted here in red if there were different tags in your version or in the version of the database. But the resolution process works pretty similar. On the left, you've got your version. On the right, you've got the most current version in the database. And in the middle, you have a playground where you can compose anything and make the best out of both worlds. So if we analyze the situation, then we see the beginning of that road is not critical. That's green. That's the same in both versions. Then, obviously, the user in the database here shifted those nodes here because they are in Salmon, they are at different positions, and also inserted a few ones. And fortunately, those additions I made here are at the very end. So we see this one here, it has an ID 51705456665, and it's also the last one here on that server. That means these parts and these parts are unaffected by the nodes which I added in the end. So in this case, my strategy would be, well, all those changes here in the database will make sense. And they are newer than my changes, obviously. So let me just use them all and then add those nodes which are inserted here at the end of that highway, at the end of there. Well, that means, first of all, what you can do is you control it with those icons, those buttons here right in the middle. And at the end, when there is nothing on our sandbox here in our playground, the only option, and when I didn't select anything, the only option is just to move all those nodes onto the middle, the new version. That means in this case, I would press the lower button here, which would shift all those nodes from the server version onto the new version we're about to create. The situation looks like this. we've got this merged version, as they call it, and Ignite is the identical copy of the version from the database. And now what we have to do is select those nodes which contain my changes, those red ones, which I added to that highway. So that means I first of all select them. And when I select those nodes, I've got a couple of more options available. Just recall previously, at the very beginning, when this was empty, there were only just the options. Well, just copy everything from here or from there using those buttons because nothing had been selected. Once we hit that button and copied all those nodes into here, we've got no further actions available because, well, first we have to select something and we have to select what we do with here. So we select those nodes from the end of my own version, which I want to add. Then there are two options. With the top button, I would be able to insert them at the top of the selection. Of course, that would be completely wrong. And with this button, I can push them here to the bottom. If I would select one of those nodes in here, then two other options would be available: insert above the one marked and insert below the one marked. So you really have got a toolbox in here where you can compose a new version out of the current version of the server and the current version which you wanted to upload. So we select those additional nodes and say, with this icon, put them at the end. And then we're in here. What you have to do as well, then once you're done, is you have to hit the freeze button. That's just a security mechanism that you cannot upload that inadvertently while you were not ready. So this is the state where you can still add things and delete things from here. And once you're done and happy with that, hit the freeze button. Then it turns into unfreeze. That means you could unfreeze this version and do some more edits. But in this case, a quick check will show us, well, now the merged version consists of the first nodes from the database version, plus all the additional nodes which I wanted to upload. And then it looks perfect, and we can send a new version to the database, which contains both my additions as well as the changes made by a different user just before I wanted to upload. And then we say apply resolution, which means we have a layer in JOSM then, which contains this modified state. And then we simply upload this layer again, just as you wanted to do previously, and then you should be done well, unless someone else gets in your way and you have to redo this whole process. So just to summarize what I've been talking about here, the very first thing is synchronize the entire data set in order to get a feeling how many conflicts are there. If you just have a few conflicts here in this resolution window, you might want to deal with them one after the other. If it's an unmanageable amount, then just, well, scrap the layer and start mapping again. That's way easier than trying to work through 100 conflicts. And working through a conflict means just get an overview. What is the current version on the server? What is your version which you wanted to submit? And see if you can figure out the best of both worlds and try to put together a version which contains all the changes. If that is not possible, then you can still cancel that and drop your layer. But in many cases, such as roads, chances are high that people will have been editing at completely unrelated parts of the road so that you can really merge all those changes. Yeah, that's basically what can be said about conflict resolution. Do we have anything here in questions? I don't think there is anything related to relations here.
Yeah, haven't seen anything new related to relations, no.
Okay, so then, Jeffrey, I would hand it back to you and let us know something about relations here.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'll go ahead and share my screen again. Yeah, thanks, Michael. So yeah, we're going to chat a bit about relations now in the remaining time. So basically, yeah, we have points, lines, and points, lines, and ways in when mapping in OpenStreetMap, but also do map relations to map things like multi-polygons, like routes, like waterways. So basically some kind of complicated features. But yeah, this is the page, which the week page on the OSM wiki, which shows you the different types of features that you can map using relations. So yeah, one is multi-polygons. So for areas where the outlines consist of multiple ways. For example, there are buildings which have a courtyard inside. That's one example of where you can use a multi-polygon, but you can also use relations to map routes. So if you're going to map like a bus route, which has like bus stops on it, then you're also going to use a route, or even major highways, which are numbered as well. You'll find those as routes. The other thing that is normally used to map relations are boundaries. So political administrative boundaries. They also use a lot of relations, as well as waterways. So if you're going to map like a riverbank, even lakes with islands in them. So to show that the islands are also part of the lake, you're going to tag those as relations. So just going to go through a few slides here, and then after that we will look at some examples in JOSM. Yeah, so basically, I think you have come across this when mapping in JOSM. If you select something that is a relation in the tags and membership, it will show you that it is a member of. But it also show you the relations it has and what it is. So, for example, in this example here, the object that is selected is a boundary, which is also part of another boundary, which is also part of a multi-polygon and a part of like a forest. So one of the things you'll see that a relation has members. So for example, this boundary has 44 members, and it's showing here that it is incomplete. It's showing incomplete because not the whole length of the boundary has not been selected. So that's one way how you can identify a relation when mapping in JOSM. So like I mentioned, one simple way to see a multi-polygon or to do a multi-polygon is by mapping this kind of building where there is a building, but it has like a courtyard inside, which is an open space. So you can simply create that from tools and then create multi-polygon, or you can use the shortcut Control B after selecting both features. And after adding it as a multi-polygon, you will notice that yeah, the inner space is is white, meaning that this is part of a multi-polygon. And you can see here from the properties that it's a multi-polygon which is having two members in it. The other example where relations are used is when mapping like sports fields. So this is an example where there is like a soccer field in the middle, but then around the soccer field, there is a running track. So what that means is that, yeah, these two features are under the same sports feature, but they are related in kind of a marked polygon. And you can see here from the properties that, yeah, this is a marked polygon, which is the track, but it has two members, one which is the outer, which is the track, and the one which is inner, which is um, the soccer field. So adding relations is easy. Yeah, under the relations window in JOSM, there is a button which says create new relation. And when you add it, you add like key and value, but also you have to add like the individual members. Like I mentioned, yeah, a relation is made up of members. So that individual members can be also ways and points that you add to make up a map polygon or a relation. The other thing that usually used also to map map polygons are land use features. So if you're going to map like a forest, which also has like other things inside the forest, then you may have to map that also as a relation. So yeah, like I mentioned, when you select a relation in JOSM, it may show you the word incomplete because you're not viewing the whole relation. So one way, if you want to see where the relation starts and where it ends, is by downloading all its members. So, and that's done by just right-clicking the line, and then you say download members. And when that happens, you'll see uh, where the relation leads, and then you'll be able to see all its members. And I'll show you how to do that in a bit in JOSM. So this is also another example of a very long highway, which has been mapped as a relation. And you can see here, it has a name, US 285 Colorado, but it has 587 members. So those are like individual segments that are combined to make up this kind of relation. Yeah, same example here, a long road. But yeah, it can get complex where you also see, uh, a relation which is made up of like land use. For example, this is yeah, this is a forest, and you can see here from the number of members it has that it is having several things within. So that's why it is always yeah, you have to be careful when mapping and you see a relation, because breaking it can really make things disappear from the map. Yeah, you can see, for example, an island can disappear from the map, or even a lake can disappear from the map if a certain segment of the relation has been broken and it's no longer rendering on the map. Yeah, so yeah, I'll just now jump back to JOSM and just show you some things in JOSM. But just to mention one more thing, one way to check when you are validating a relation is to check this kind of line. As you can see, this is a relation for a forest, and you can see the individual members that are part of this, that make up this relation. But what shows you that it is complete is this line. If it is broken, this line would not be making like a complete loop. It will be broken somewhere in the middle, and that's where you would go to try and fix and make sure it is all connected and shows as one individual relation. Okay, so I'm just going to jump to my JOSM and show you some of this. So yeah, this is how it would look like if it was broken. So switching to JOSM now, still in my area here for Kampala. Yeah, there is a lot of things here. but one that I want to use as an example is boundary relation. Actually, I'll add the filter for the boundary so that we can see it as we talk about it. So I'll add a filter for boundary administrative so that I can only look at that. So yeah, this is a boundary of an administrative area in Kampala. And when I select it, I will see here that yeah, this boundary has 34 members, but this boundary is also shared by another administrative area on the other side, which has 14 members. So if I want to focus on this one, which has 34 members, I can select it here, and you can see here when I do that, it is highlighted. It is highlighted so I can see it, and I can also see some of the subsections of it. So if I say select, if I right click here and I say select the relation, then you can see it has been highlighted in, in a different kind of color. Also, if I say select members, I can see here the different members that, make up this kind of relation. But to see how it looks like, I can go to the edit bit. I'll just go again how I went there. So if I right click on this boundary, which is a relation, I can go to the edit bit, and then I can see yeah, the different segments that make up this relation. So yeah, when I select one, I can see it being highlighted here on the map. But I can see this is a complete loop, meaning that really the relation is kind of connecting properly. Yeah, so yeah, that's how you can see the properties of a relation, meaning that if there was an administrative area that is part of this area, that because you may find like there is a district, and below that there is like sub-county, then there is a parish, then there is a village. So if those have boundaries, you can still add them, but what that means is that you would have to draw like the new area, and then select it and then add it to an existing relation so that it becomes part of that that bigger kind of relation. But just if I can find also another example of another feature which is not a boundary. So because I've said you can also find these on land use. So for example, this one is a wetland. I can know it is a relation because it shows me here it is a boundary, but it's also a wetland. So if I come here and I say select members, then I can be able to see the different members that make up this kind of wetland right here. And I can also come here and say download members, because sometimes I've downloaded data, but the relation can be going beyond the section that you have downloaded. So when you go here and then you say download members, it will be able to, to download and show you the full extent of that relation. And if it is broken, that's when now you can go and try to fix it. Yeah, so now I can see the full extent of this wetland, yeah, which is called Kaliduba West Wetland. And also this is another example of this is an island. Let me just show you this on the map. So this is how it looks like on the map. It's an island within the lake, but also it has like forests on the island. So the person who mapped like the forests added them as multi-polygon. And then you can see here the individual members. So this is like the outer. You can see here the role is outer, and the other ones are just inner parts of the multi-polygon. So in the video, smaller section that show that inside the forest, there are some areas which are not part of the forest. And that's why it is part of multi-polygon. So that's how the relation looks like. But even up here, you can see the key and the value. And one key attribute is type multi-polygon to show that this is kind of relation. So I know we are at the top of the hour. I just want to stop there and ask if there is any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. Yeah, so Michael, back to you.
Okay, so just wait a minute. It's less than ideal. Slight problem here. Yeah, that's not as it should be. Okay. And here you go. Just wanted to make sure that if there is anything which comes to your mind during the next few hours or days or whenever, you're not lost. You can reach out to us, either drop us an email at mappersupport@hotosm.org, or you can also join Slack chat system. Just go to slack.hotosm.org where you can get a link to register. And then once you're registered, head for the Mapper Support channel and ask your questions there. And you'll typically get an answer for which you don't have to wait that long. If you want to be more involved with the training working group, like to help us either producing webinars or maybe also maintaining the LearnOSM website, let us know by writing us to training@hotosm.org. And if you're generally interested what this humanitarian OpenStreetMap team does, there is a website, www.hotosm.org, where you can find all the information about different working groups and all our activities. Well, thanks for having been with us for those 2 hours. Thanks, Sharon and Jeffrey, for helping me in presenting all this. And as I hope you can improve your mapping with us in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you,
Jeffrey, you have another final words?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you also to Sharon and the participants for attending. Yeah, we have these more, we have a list of training. So I think the next one will be on ID editor. But yeah, watch out for the next one. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are.
Yeah, so thank you, Michael, and thank you to all the attendees.
Bye, everyone.